Hi everyone, welcome to Dust Shelf Collectibles. Well, back on the BT-01. So this arrived yesterday. I did a very brief unboxing late last night. Got it up on the channel. Today I'm going to build it, but I'm going to do it slightly different to some of the other videos I've done. So when I did the BBX, I think there was about 3 hours of footage I put on the channel, and it's just too long. So I'm going to build a stage, then just film a description, build the next stage, film a description, and try and make the video a bit more concise. So let me know what you think, whether the format's any better. Anyway, with that said, let's get this over the bench and let's get building it. Well, let's make a start. So the plan is I'm just going to go through and probably every couple of pages come back and show you the progress rather than going through step by step. Okay, so about 15 minutes have gone past, and yeah, you can see here this is where I've got to. So drop these bearings in. I've actually put roller bearings in the kit. This came with plastic bearings. I've put roller bearings in there and mounted this onto this back plate here. You can see here the drive shaft, this cup sitting inside here with a pin through the shaft. That's all done. Now the motor, the kit came with a standard 540 motor. I've actually put bought tune motor in there, you can see. And we've put the pinion on there and then mounted that into the gearbox. So that's essentially the first couple of pages, got to this sort of assembly point. And yeah, we're moving on now to mounting on the top decks. Right, so moved on another page. So we've got a little bit of assembly gone on the front here. We've put the rear decking on there, you can see, and then down here we've got the servo mounting area and the switch, and we're just putting the diff together now. Now this diff appears to be exactly the same diff as used on the TT-01. You can see we've got the 4 cogs in there. This is then going to drop on top, and you can see this will screw on from there. Right, let's carry on with the next bit. So I've had one little tricky bit before I explain about the diff. So this shaft here, MA10, is 2 by 11.8 millimeters, and there's also a shaft in the kit which is an MA11, which is 2 by 10 millimeters. So these two shafts, there's 2 millimeters difference in their length. Very easy to get muddled up. If you do get muddled up, it doesn't go together properly, as we found out. Right, so begin to understand a little bit more about how the setup works. So this is your differential, and slots into the back of the car like so. There's a little adjoining piece that joins the gearbox with the diff drive. Now, assuming your motor is always spinning in the same direction because your electrics are all set up, and especially, I guess this is especially apparent for brushless motors, your coupling is always going to drive in a forward motion like so. So always turning clockwise, and you can see both cups rotating forward. So that is the diff sitting in that way round. The diff now comes out, rotates through 90 degrees and goes back in, and now when the input's still rotating clockwise, you can see that the cups are obviously rotating in the opposite orientation. So this is the switch between front wheel drive and rear wheel drive by flipping the diff through 180 degrees. Okay, so we've attached the upper arms. These are the rear upper arms for this configuration. You can see those there, and we've got the little ball joints inside. As I say, that's an upgrade. You can change those plastic ones to metal ones should you wish. And then moving to this side, made sure that the diff has gone in the right orientation. So basically with the sort of larger part on the outboard side. Again, to make sure it runs in the right way. And you see the little joining piece in the middle there, just moving it with my finger, that connects the shafts together. And then we've got the lower arms that have just gone on underneath here, and you can see there's a little step here. You drop the balls in, which are there, and there's this sort of upright. Not sure what that's for yet, but I'm sure we'll find out very shortly. Okay, on to the next little bit. So with both the upper and lower arms in, time to fit the upright. You see the upright assembly here, 2 bearings, cup through the middle with the drive shaft, and obviously the other cup in the gearbox there. And you see the suspension has gone together, and finally the attachment of the bumper mounting plate, which is there. So that's pretty much the rear end complete. So you've got the drive shaft on there with the differential mounted in the right orientation, and yeah, the rear end of the car all together. Okay, so in this part we're putting together the front of the chassis, and you can see as we go through, we put the upper plate on here, the front suspension holding points, attaching the upper arms, attaching the lower arms, and again the uprights that go through here. Now coming over to the next page, this is where obviously we've got the suspension to do, we'll come back to that in a minute, but this is where the front and rear chassis join together, and what we have here is sort of a locking mechanism in between the two, and it's quite clever actually, because a lot of chassis that change the wheelbase do it with sort of caster angle on the uprights, but this actually, you've got shorter wheelbase here, you can see these screws matching up, and longer wheelbase here. So you've got this option of sliding the two chassis together and deciding which wheelbase you wish to go with. Okay, so that's the front end done, that's the rear end done. Let's go and do the shock absorbers. Right, so we've got all the shocks built up and put in, but obviously just to point out, they are friction dampers on this kit. If you want to upgrade, that is an upgrade, and I am told that the B in the title of the kit is for beginner, and hence that's why they are just friction shocks. Now, I mentioned earlier moving the chassis back and forth, and I thought it was to do with the screws, but it's not. It's actually to do with this plate that's in here. So we've actually got at the moment the chassis built to 257mm, and what you do is you take this plate out and drop this one back in, and that gives you the shorter wheelbase of 251. So you've got an alternative component there that you unscrew and obviously change the length of the chassis. So one of the things to keep in mind is if you are changing the chassis for different runs or builds or racing, you're going to have a tray of spare parts that you need to swap in and out. Okay, on to the final bit. So electrics go in, so we've got servo here, we've got the radio here, electronic speed controller, they're all hooked up. Tyres glued onto the rims and then bolted onto the chassis in the four corners, obviously. Then you create these assemblies. So you've got two assemblies, one on the front, which sits about here, and finally on the rear here you've got the rear body mount, but also on here are the linkage rods. So these little linkage rods here that stop these wheels from turning, and obviously they're adjustable, so you can adjust the toe in and toe out. Once you've got those two assemblies made, this is a key point here. You can see how they mount down onto the respective ends of the chassis. Now this is important because depending on what configuration you build, these will swap ends, but I'll explain that in a minute. So for this straightforward mid-engined rear-wheel drive, we've got the steering at the front here and the link rods at the back here. And then final steps obviously is just to drop your aerial in and you're ready to go. We'll talk through the body in a minute, but for the purposes of explaining how this converts into different configurations, I'm going to use this diagram here. So at the moment this is mid-engine rear-wheel drive. To convert it to a front-engine front-wheel drive, you literally, and I'm going to do this physically, turn the chassis through 180 degrees, your bumper changes ends, the steering assembly and the rod assembly switch ends, and then finally you take the diff housing out, rotate it through 180 degrees, put it back in. You've now got a front engine front wheel drive. Now to convert this into a front engine rear wheel drive, a little bit more advanced, but you can see from the diagram here, the motor moves away from the diff housing. So at the moment the diff housing is here, the motor is here. This motor moves car forward, and then there's a longer prop shaft running through the center of the car, so a little bit more involved to convert that. So that's the main configurations, and as I explained earlier in the video, these four screws, there's a mounting plate in here, and that's how you adjust the length of the chassis. So that gives you your 6 configurations. Right, onto the body preparation. We've cut the body out here. and drill some holes so that it mounts onto the chassis like so. Next, so once the body's clean, we're going to airbrush this one, and what's the name of the colour of this? Iridescent blue. So that's going to look quite nice, I think. Right, well there you go, that's the body sprayed up. Beautiful colour. And just now the valances to do at the bottom. So yeah, looking good. Right, fully painted and then back covered with black paint just to finish off. Taking the window masks off. Very, very clean lines, quite pleased with those. So now down to the final bit, which is to remove the outer plastic. Always the best bit of any of these radio control kits. Let me just see if I can get it started. There it goes. Right, I'll just peel this off gently, making sure I get all the little bits. And the big reveal. That's so satisfying. Never gets old. There you go, one finished body, looking really good. Let's get these last little bits off. Fantastic. Well, that's as far as I'm going to take it today. I've still got the light buckets to do and the window screen stickers and things, but doesn't it look stunning? I'm really pleased with the colour. Looks absolutely perfect. I would say the chassis, it does feel a little bit heavy. Not too bad, but obviously with that sort of modularity in there for the flexibility and changing the drivetrains, you know, there are going to have to be compromises and additional bits of plastic and things in there. And I think, as I said in the build, you know, will need to keep a pot of parts together for, you know, switching bits in and out, should you wish to change the configuration of your chassis once you've got it running. But otherwise, quite enjoyable build, quite an interesting concept, and yeah, something new. So yeah, quite enjoyed that one. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please do give it a thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, check out some of the other videos. There's quite a lot on there, all different subjects, anything that takes my interest, from RC cars to roller coasters to you name it, trains, it's all there. And if you can subscribe, you'd be doing me a massive favour. I'd be really grateful. Yeah, great model, really enjoyed putting this one together, but I'm going to leave the video there. So thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.